My name is Alessandra, and today I welcome our guest.
My name is Giselle Duran.
My name is Charles Lee.
My name is Skylar Prock.
We are going to be discussing whether or not people learn from their fear. So Charles, tell us about your poem you analyzed and your topic question, which is, how do we learn from our fear of being invisible?
The poem that I analyzed was Muse de Box Arts by W.H. Auden, and in this picture he describes mankind's suffrage and how they're very blissed. So he uses the painting that he saw in the Art Museum in France called Muse de Box Art. And the painting was called The Landscape with Falling Icarus. In the painting you can see a boy's legs, pale legs, flailing in the water. And then there's an expensive ship that passes right by the boy. And in the story he says he's pretty sure that the ship notices the boy, but they don't do anything about it because they feel like they shouldn't, since there's already been many disasters in the world. So one small thing, them helping one small thing shouldn't make a difference to them, they guess. Alright, so the most important thing that W.H. Auden, he kind of like wanted to interpret from the painting about fear is that he talks about how one could, let's say, fear being invisible to those to those around him, and the need of help in the struggle. And so the one sentence from stanza 4, lines 14 through 15, he says how everything turns away quite leisurely from the disaster, and that's basically saying ignoring the problem at hand.
So why do you think that we learn from our fear?
I think that, well, let's just say the boy falling out of the sky, that was something unknown. And so we kind of fear things that we don't know, right? We kind of fear the things that we don't know. And so I guess something that happened throughout the town probably earlier in the years that kind of made everybody ignore it with sort of dismissed. And so now they're seeing something strange again, but they're ignoring it this time again. But this time they're gonna feel regret for not helping the boy when he dies.
Okay, so if they didn't feel regret though, would it be learning? Because I remember you saying earlier that humans just get used to the pain.
Yeah.
So would that really be learning?
But yeah.
Or is the regret learning?
No, not really. Regret could be learning because they're feeling sorrow for the other person's.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so they won't repeat the same thing or
no,
anything like that?
They could or they could not. Like, no one really knows human beings because they're human beings. They have their own mind, own will. So you could never guess what someone might, or predict what someone might do next based on their emotions. And so they felt regret. So maybe if it meant feeling too much regret, they could try to help out during the next strange situation going on.
Okay. Fair enough.
So moving on to Skylar, tell us what happens when we cover fear with emotions. Do we learn from it?
That's a very interesting question. I think personally that a lot of the time we don't learn from it merely because we just cover it up with a different emotion. My story was actually a short story by George Orwell called Animal Farm. In Animal Farm, there was a lot of fear, a lot of mistrust, a lot of misunderstanding. The animals couldn't read, and the pigs were the only ones who really could. And so they were able to change the rules. They were able to change what basically we would call our constitution for the farm. They had like 13, I believe it was, rules. And a lot of them just kept changing throughout the story, just to fit what the pigs wanted. The thing about it was why the animals rebelled against the farmer was because of fear and abuse. They turned that fear into hatred of the farmer. And thus they didn't really understand when the pigs actually rose up and became the farmers. Because at the end of the story, the line actually goes, we looked at I believe I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but we looked at the men and the pig and we couldn't tell the difference between the two. That's the end of the story. They realized their mistake at the end. But originally when they were actually angry and just just covering up that fear with anger, they didn't realize that the pigs would do the same thing as the humans, because all that was happening was at least that person isn't in charge. We didn't learn from their mistakes, but at least that person isn't in charge.
So you're saying that the pigs, they weren't necessarily fearing the farmer as much as the other animals were?
Originally, yes. Originally, yes. I believe so. Yeah, I believe that the pigs were fearful just as any other creatures. However, the pigs then use that false fear, the anger instead of the fear, in order to actually manipulate the animals.
So you're saying like the domestication of the pigs, that allows them to arise on top of it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So
Yeah.
you're saying that they pretty much they don't learn from their fear, they just covered it up.
Yeah, they just covered it up with anger of the farmer. If they would have actually understood why they were fearful, how they were being abused and neglected, then I believe that they would have realized the same thing when the pigs actually did that to them. But instead, it was merely the pigs turning that anger, because a lot of the time, the pigs were stating statistics like at least you're being fed more than the farmer was. It was just using the anger instead of the actual fear.
And so do you think the animals will try to overcome the pigs now that they are technically the farmer?
It's really hard to tell, because as it says, the man and the pig are very similar, and actually in the book they make a lot of treaties between man and pig. So if they did, it would be very difficult to. Plus also the pigs are already in power. Once something's in power, it's very hard to get it out, especially when that thing that became into power actually helped take you out of the original power, the farmer.
And so if the animals tried to, let's say, learn how to read, could they overthrow the pigs, seeing how they domesticated? They're just as domesticated as the pigs.
In theory, but I believe that just due to the fact that all the propaganda has already gone through, it would be nearly impossible, just because of the fact that so few survivors in the book are actually living, because the pigs would kill them off if they didn't agree, just to make sure that there was nobody opposed to it.
So it's basically like a dictatorship.
It is very much a dictatorship, sadly.
Okay, so Skylar, regarding your beliefs to Animal Farm, how can that translate to outside references?
Well, the thing about it is there's a lot of references that I can translate to. For example, I believe about now should be a clip of Bambi showing. But actually it's very interesting. When Bambi's mother is killed, you don't really feel fear necessarily. What you feel is sadness, just because of the grief. You don't necessarily register the fear and understand what happened. All that happens is you just feel grief. You've lost someone that you love. And thus you never really learn from it. Now, granted, luckily we never see a hunter again in Bambi, but if we were, most likely Bambi wouldn't have any idea what to do, just because of the fact that he wouldn't really register that the hunter shot her, or to stay away from hunters. It's just, my mom's dead. Okay? It's just sadness.
Yeah,
it's just shock and sadness.
You wouldn't know how to react to it.
Exactly.
You just stand there.
So it'd be a deer in headlights, no pun intended. But
Yeah.
so that's the thing about it. A lot of the time we actually don't learn from it, just because we focus on our pure emotions.
Yeah. We don't think about it. We
don't think about it. We just
we're just there
do.
in the moment, the situation, the emotion. It's just there.
And it's very hard to get out of that.
Okay. So, finally, Giselle, tell us your opinion on why people learn from their fear and what you analyzed.
So what I analyzed was a article about I Am Malala, and it comes from Achieve 3000. And my focus question was actually pretty much the same one, that do people learn from their fears? And from the article, I learned that I say that people do learn from their fears, because Malala, she's this young girl who fights for women's education, for young girls' education. And there's these other young girls who attend to her father's school, which he founded for them. And at that time, the young girls, they feel fear. Malala is attending the school, and at that moment, she does not, I believe she's not feeling any fear because nothing has happened to her. But once after she gets attacked by the Taliban, they shoot her, and it was like, well, yeah, they shoot her, and after, like, it was crazy because like she could not have survived it, because like, I don't know, the bullet went through her head, and it was crazy. But after that, everyone from everywhere around the world, they saw that she survived, and she received so much support, and from that, even from her community, her receiving support from her community, it's like saying that they're not going to fear the Taliban anymore because they're supporting Malala. They're supporting everything she's doing for them, and
just because she did.
Yes, so that's when I believe that the young girls, seeing Malala not afraid, made them forget about their fear of the Taliban. So they're learning from their fear that there shouldn't be any fear, because it's better to stand up for what you believe. And them showing that support is what it's showing that they're supporting for what they're standing up for what they believe is right. And yeah.
Well, in theory, though, the thing about it is if there's no fear, then you just going to school is a normal thing. So, and I believe that in many of her interviews, when she was describing it was a very fearful time for her.
It was.
So, if I may, I believe that wording you're trying to get is even though she was feeling fear,
Yes.
she pushed through it, actually covering it with a different emotion, just determination.
Okay. Yeah.
Feeling all the happiness.
I see it, yes. I see it that she learned that she shouldn't feel fear because she's over there fighting, and she's
Okay.
going to continue to fight for their education.
So like determination before the bus, and then
Yes.
after the bus would be like pride, because everyone gets to see how she's been doing
Yes.
it, and the support that she got every other girl.
Mm-hmm. And she's showing them that there shouldn't be no fear, because
So her
it is
determination.
her determination that's
Her
showing
determination increased after she survived the accident from the Taliban.
them. Yes.
Okay.
Very interesting. I have a question contrary to what you have told us. If Malala wouldn't have learned from her fears, how would she have fought for women's right to education?
So I think that Malala would have never even fought for rights to education if she never learned from her fears, because the Taliban would threaten to kill the young girls, and if they were to study education, and if and if she would have given up by that point already after the Taliban's attack. She wouldn't even have.
So you're basically saying that if her determination didn't overcome her fear of the Taliban, she wouldn't have basically fought for the education for the girls in Pakistan.
Yeah, pretty much, because she would have.
Just plain right.
She would have, given up. Like, there's no point in doing it if the Taliban is gonna keep, I don't know, being like that.
Here's a clip of further explanation on how we learn from fear.
That human beings are hardwired to be optimists. So maybe that's why we think of fear sometimes as a danger in and of itself. Don't worry, we like to say to one another. Don't panic. In English, fear is something we conquer. It's something we fight, something we overcome. But what if we looked at...
After watching the video, we have concluded that we do learn from our fear. That's all we have for today.
Thanks
Thank you for watching.